It's Wednesday, March 3, and this is your Barbados Today Evening News Update. We get started with a report card from the National Insurance Scheme on financial payouts to citizens hard hit by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. NIS Chairman Leslie Haynes QC gave the update at today's COVID-19 press conference, which zeroed in on labour matters.
We at the National Insurance have paid in unemployment benefits to date over $155 million Barbados dollars in claims. We have had approximately over 50,000 unemployment claims. Of course, the individual unemployment claims are about 38,000 persons, of which about, regrettably, 4,000 of those did not qualify, so that there were about 34,000 persons who have benefited from the unemployment fund.
Acting Director of the National Insurance Scheme, Jennifer Hunt, says the massive payouts have put pressure on the unemployment fund, but the scheme remains strong and provisions have been made to continue the timely payment of benefits.
The unemployment fund has been severely tested, and the other funds, however, and our overall portfolio of funds remains strong. The reserves of the NIS are strong. We have adequate reserves to meet claims we are required to pay. Now, in terms of what the unemployment fund faced last year, the chairman would have told you that we paid $155.5 million last year. To put that also in perspective, the previous year we spent $49.3 million. In 2018, we spent $38.1, and in 2017, $32.8. So comparatively, you can see the impact of COVID-19 on the fund in 2020. The portfolio, as I advised, was totally exhausted, and the National Insurance Board agreed to utilize a specific portion of the portfolio of the National Insurance Fund to facilitate the ongoing uninterrupted payment of unemployment benefits. Now, this specific source was the early redemption of some government bonds to loan the unemployment fund.
Meanwhile, Minister of Labour and Social Relations Colin Jordan served notice that the island's labour laws are still fully enforced, as he disclosed that his ministry has been dealing with a range of complaints.
The Ministry of Labour and the Labour Department has been very forceful with employers in indicating, firstly, if a person works, they need to be paid. That's one. If they are sent on vacation, the Holiday with Pay Act speaks directly to what is supposed to happen. That person is to receive vacation pay, what we call vacation pay. It's called holiday pay in the legislation. Those are very clear. And when we interact with employers, we are also very clear where those matters are concerned. Now, on the matter of severance, you would have heard the Prime Minister speak quite fully to that matter. There were situations, and some of those are still existing situations, where persons have been severed, but the employer has not made the payment. The Prime Minister, the head of the government, has been very clear that government will be going after those employers to make sure that even if the National Insurance Scheme makes the initial payment, that those employers have to pay. So there's no getting away from it.
On to today's COVID-19 update, an 82-year-old Barbadian man died after spending 5 days at the Harrison Point Isolation Facility. His death brings to 37 the number of people who have succumbed to the viral illness. Meanwhile, there were 23 new positive cases from 742 tests on Tuesday. These include 8 men and 15 women. 11 of them were already at the Harrison Point Isolation Facility, and the remaining 12 are Barbadians. 54 people recovered and were released from isolation. Active cases stand at 520. Overall, Barbados has recorded 3,163 confirmed COVID cases. 2,606 persons have recovered. Head of the COVID-19 Communication Unit, Ambassador Liz Thompson, has again urged Barbadians to remain vigilant to curb the spread of the virus. She cautioned that COVID-19 has also been impacting the nation's youth.
At Harrison Point Isolation Facility, or at Harrison Point COVID Care Facility, there are 2 persons between the ages of 17 and 40 in primary isolation. There is 1 minor, somebody under 18 in secondary isolation. And in tertiary, there are 3 minors. In the isolation facilities across the country, there are 108 minors.
The sugar crop got off to a smooth start today. Officials are projecting higher yields this year thanks to recent rainfall. Agriculture Minister Indar Weir told a recent press conference this year's harvest is expected to yield 107,000 tons, and this could go as high as 110,000 tons. This compares to 90,000 tons produced last year.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
The regional happenings, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is optimistic that the political stalemate in Tobago resulting from the 6-6 deadlock in the Tobago House of Assembly election on January 6 will soon be resolved. Earlier today, he met with the 12 elected assemblymen for the Tobago House of Assembly. More on this report from TTT News.
Dr. Rowley said the general sentiment of the 12 elected Tobagonians is that they can come together to elect or select persons to have a functioning Tobago House of Assembly. Until such time, the Joint Select Committee has completed its work on the Tobago Autonomy Bill.
The election, which would have been brought about by the government's amendment of the existing act, if it is proclaimed, which will be in the same kind of time frame as the completion of the Joint Select Committee's work. And therefore, would you want to have 2 elections, one of which you might disagree with and the other one which you may not expect?
Dr. Rowley noted that the general consensus was a willingness to work together. He hopes some agreement would be made at a reasonable time.
I anticipate that in some reasonable time frame, especially since we've already had a month of no movement, that they would be able to come to a position of firmness, firm up some arrangement. And that is the undertaking that I was given. So I don't want to, there is no date put on it, but I would say that I think everybody understands that this ought to be dealt with in a certain amount of earnestness.
On the international front, security forces killed at least 38 protesters in Myanmar today as they dramatically escalated their crackdown on protests against last month's military coup. Phil Robertson, the Deputy Director of Human Rights Asia Division, says the situation is worrying.
We've heard about a lot of use of live ammunition against protesters, indiscriminate shooting. We have a case of police basically pulling ambulance, EMTs, out of their ambulance, beating them up, shooting one of them, and destroying the ambulance. It is absolute savagery that we're seeing from the military and the police. Indiscriminate use of lethal force that, as you mentioned, has resulted as many as 30 deaths. There's still a lot of differences in terms of the numbers who killed, in part because many people were severely injured and some of these people may not make it. There has also been intimidation against medical staff. We had cases where medical staff were rounded up en masse while they were protesting. So this is quite clearly the military government trying to take back control of the streets by force, not just in Yangon and Mandalay, but across the country. And there are violence occurring in many other cities as well.
That's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media and bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.